Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, good evening. I've never done one of these before, so if I screw something up, hopefully I can figure out how you can tell me. I have no idea if you can hear me. Let's assume you can. Uh, um, Hello? Is this working? Yeah, I think it is. Okay, cool. I think we're good. So I'm just going to get on with things. And then, if you have questions along the way, obviously, feel free to type them in, or you can wait till the end, or whatever. I'm not too strict on that, so just kind of do whatever seems to flow well. Should be able to put it in the little chat box there, I hope. So anyways, let's get on with this. My name is Doug. I've been coaching for QT2 since 2010. I've been racing pro since 2011, although that I just did my last pro race about a week ago, and I'm looking forward to some new athletic adventures. Let's get on with it. And the reason I'm kind of giving this talk, maximizing your potential, possibly all the way to Kona, I have had some pretty good success with getting athletes to Kona in a typical year. I'll see anywhere from 30 to 40% of my athletes getting to Kona. Um, so originally, the title of this was going to be how to get to Kona, but I kind of wanted to broaden it out a little bit. Um, because that's all we're trying to do, is maximize potential. If that potential happens to be getting you to Kona, then friggin' great. How do I go down a slide? What the heck? There we go. So I'm going to go over a few main components here. Uh, they are mental approach to training, mental approach to racing, mental approach to nutrition, and coach-athlete relationship. Now, you'll notice most of this stuff is mental approach, because that's kind of what I want to get at. Because how you maximize your potential all comes down to your mental approach to it. The physical actions you take, the physical actions you do are merely just an extension of what's coming out of your brain. So if we can address what's coming out of your brain and how you approach things, then everything flows from there. So one thing you'll see on most of these slides, I have a background. I won't explain to you what the background is until the end, so it's a game you can play, figure out what the heck I'm doing with this background. Like, why do I have the warden from Shawshank here on mental approach to training? What's going on? Anyways, the first thing dealing with training, above all, more important than workout volume, workout quality, intensity, anything, is just consistency. Just showing up every day, or every 6 days a week or 5 days, whatever your schedule is that works with your life, stick to it. There's no single workout. You could go out and have some epic session. Go run 20 miles at 6:10 pace, or whatever, just something bananas like that. That's still not going to have the same training benefit as just going out and running 7 miles a day every day for 3 weeks in a row. It just isn't. The body responds to frequency, in terms of the whole stress, recover, adapt cycle, and also in terms of training your nervous system to be efficient, firing the right muscles, using the right movement patterns. It all comes back to consistency. And obviously, to hit consistency, one, you have to set up a schedule that is actually realistic for your life. If you have a coach, don't go to your coach and say, oh, yeah, I can totally train 20 hours a week, when only 12 hours a week is actually realistic. Because you're just setting yourself up for very inconsistent training, and you're setting yourself up for failure. So you have to be realistic about your logistical schedule constraints. And then the other part of consistency is obviously health. One of my real mantras is, I always like to say, don't let a 2-week injury become a 2-month injury. So if something hurts, stop doing things that aggravate it. I know that sounds simple. I know that sounds very basic, but you'd be amazed, absolutely amazed at how many triathletes I deal with and I know that just are bullheaded and they get panicky about missing 2 workouts and they run themselves into the ground and then all of a sudden they end up having to take 8 weeks off. Um, it is always better to nip injuries in the bud. Um, and a conservative approach is essentially never wrong. There might be better approaches, like an aggressive approach can work out, but a conservative approach is always going to work out. And so that's just something you're going to have to settle between you and your coach. And if your coach says, you know, listen, homie, I really think you need to back off, just go with it because they're looking out for your best interests. And as I said, conservative approach is never wrong. Um, and this comes back to this first point I have. Everyone deals with injuries. You know, pick a star triathlete: Jan Frodeno, Craig Alexander, Daniela Reef, Marinda Carfrae. They've all been injured, but you know why they're good? Because they come back from injuries. One, they deal with the injuries in a mature fashion. They say, "This is." This is what's hurt. This is what I can do. This is what I can't do. This is my timeline to healing. This is my timeline to when I can race again. This, yada, yada, yada. Um, and that's how you appropriately deal with it. Inappropriately dealing with it is trying to force yourself and train your way through the injury and making it worse, or B, panicking and saying, you come back, say you get healthy, and there's a temptation to say, oh, I got to make up for 4 weeks of missed training. I got to do this, I got to do that. Well, all you're going to do is run yourself into the ground and possibly injure yourself again. Your body decides when you're healed. Your race schedule doesn't decide when you're healed. Your training schedule doesn't decide when you're healed. Your body does. So you just have to listen to it and take what it will give to you. And if you do that, you can achieve some pretty darn good consistency. And now along those lines, in terms of health, I'm pretty flexible with my athletes when it comes to swimming and biking. I'm not flexible with running. This is because of the injury risk associated with running. Whereas swimming and biking, honestly, it's pretty hard to really injure yourself. Obviously, you can. You can have overuse strain injuries or muscle pulls or tears in anything. I'm just talking about generalizations. In general, swimming and biking are much lower injury risk than running is. So that's why I'm a lot looser on swimming and biking. And this all goes back to maximize your potential, consistency, and health. These are literally the 2 cornerstones. Without this, nothing else matters. And back to this, the Shawshank Warden. Why do I have this picture here? Think of Andy Dufresne. How did he break out of Shawshank? Patience and persistence. He just had a little rock hammer tapping away at a hole in the wall for 18 years. He didn't get greedy. He didn't try to, do too much in a day. He didn't try to steal a bigger hammer and use that and get caught. He said, this is a system. I know it works, and I know it will get me where I want to be. And however, 18 years, well, it took a while, but 18 years later, he was crawling through 500 yards of shit, and then he was a free man down in, however you say that beach in Mexico. So that's the prison warden. This is the moment in the movie when the warden and the guard discover the hole that he had burrowed in the prison walls. So, this is like the people you're racing discovering the moment, oh, so-and-so has been grinding away consistently for 2 years and they just whooped my butt. God dang it. So they're the prison warden. Moving on. More mental approach to training. In terms of maximizing your potential, you have to kind of live in your own bubble. You have to focus on being your best, not living up to someone else's Instagram account. Which maybe you say is funny, but a lot of people do that. They say, oh, I saw this picture of Joan and she was doing this epic biking trip. Oh, I saw this sweet underwater photo of Phil and he was swimming, blah, 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 blah. And it's easy to get wrapped up in that. And they forget that they're looking at the 1% highlight of that person's lives. Those people on Instagram, they're not showing all the moments when they just blow off a workout, or the moments when they're sitting in the corner crying because they failed on a workout, which is a whole other thing. Um, but you get what I'm saying. Like, Instagram is not reality, so don't get wrapped up in that stuff. You got to kind of put the blinders on, do your thing, and just figure out what's going to be best for you. If that's, if that's just training in your basement every day, fine. Like, it's not making awesome Instagram photos, but that's what works for you. And also, people will post, oh, I did this sweet workout. I ran 10 miles at such and such a pace. Well, you know why they're posting about it? Because that was some amazing workout for them that blew their mind and they were super thrilled about it. They're not doing that workout every day. So, you can't put your pressure on yourself like, oh, I saw Jim ran 10 miles at 6:30 pace the other day. I ran 10 miles at 6:40 pace today. That means he's going to whoop my butt next race. Like, no, not at all. All that means is he had some great day and he wanted to brag about it. And it's really not anything you should be worrying about. The next point here, focus on the present. Don't prejudge workouts. You would be shocked. So many times I see workout submissions from athletes. They say, oh, I woke up, I felt miserable. I didn't want to do the workout, but then I got on, and once I got going, everything felt great. And they have these great numbers on the session. And that's really one of my mantras is you can't prejudge a session. If you go in with a negative mindset, convinced that it's going to suck, you know what? It's going to suck. If you go in with an open mind, you never know what's going to happen. Your legs could respond beautifully. You could be feeling fatigue, but it might have nothing to do with your leg muscles. It might be mental fatigue from stress at work. It might just be some soreness and tightness that needs to get broken up with a warm-up. Could be a whole bunch of things. Maybe you just need a cup of coffee, So you just got to kind of jump in and see how it goes. And more often than not, it's going to go just fine. So don't count yourself out of a workout before it even starts. Along those lines of focusing on the present, you can't be thinking too much about, a common thing I see is it'll be March and say somebody's doing Placid and they'll say, oh, how am I going to run 7:30 pace at Placid if I can't even run 8-minute pace now? Well, it's only March. We're not trying to have you run 7:30 pace now. We're trying to have you run 7:30 pace on July 28th. And so the best thing you can do is just focus on the present and say, okay, I'm going to execute today as best as I can. And if you just execute every little today the best as you can, and don't worry about what's happening 4 months down the road, then all of a sudden you open your eyes 4 months down the road and boom, you're there. It's okay to have long-term goals as kind of your North Star in terms of shaping the overall structure of your training, but you should not be trying to hit your July goals in March. All that's going to do is lead to frustration. Hit your March goals in March, hit your April goals in April, and then hit your Placid goals when you're on the start line at Placid in July. If you want to think about, I keep saying Placid, pick a race, whatever. If you want to think about what the run is going to feel like at Tremblant, and that's going to help you get gritty on your run in April, like by all means, go for it. Use that as inspiration, but don't use it as a absolute number guide, if that makes any sense. More on training, Zwift is an absolutely amazing tool. I highly recommend using it for most of my athletes, not all, but most. Instead of giving them standard speed work on the bike, I'll just let them loose on a Zwift race. Being put in that competitive environment, I think, really takes them mentally out of their comfort zone, and it also forces them, it gives them that extra motivation to squeeze a few more watts out of the session that I don't think they're getting if they do on their own. You would be amazed at how many power PRs I've set and my athletes have set simply because they're in that competitive racing environment. And you know what? People always complain about weight dopers on Zwift or this or that. Good. I welcome them. They make it harder. They make it way harder to keep up, and that gives us a better workout. And then come, July or June when they can't type a fake number into the keyboard and cheat, and they've actually got to put rubber on the road and their butt in the bike saddle. They can't cheat on their weight anymore. And you know what? We've got the edge because we've been chasing their cheating butts around all winter, but that advantage is taken away. And all of a sudden, it's an advantage for us because we've been racing this super tough artificial competition. I friggin' love that. Absolutely love it. And that kind of feeds into the idea of the purpose of training is to improve, not to stroke your ego. If you get your butt kicked on a Zwift race, so what? Who cares? It's irrelevant. The point is to get faster, not to go win some imaginary race that nobody actually cares about and has no real world implications. And that feeds into the idea of when you're in the pool, you like a lot of people have technique struggles, but they say, oh, I want to swim hard because they think like, oh, the lifeguard's going to think I'm a bad swimmer if I don't go really fast. It's ridiculous thoughts like that. Trust me, I've talked to people like this. Um, and so, if you're crummy at breathing to one side, just breathe to that side until you're good at it. If you have crummy balance in the pool, just work on your balance till you're good at it. It's training, it's practice for the race. The race is not in the pool when you're working out. You're prepping for the race. So if you have specific limiters, you've got to hold your ego back, sublimate it, and remember what exactly it is you're working for, whether that's biking, running, swimming, whatever. Don't be afraid to quote unquote look dumb. The point is to look good and fast on race day, not on some random workout in February. And lastly, with this mental approach to training, it's okay to fail. One of the most famous athletes who kind of publicized this is Katie Ledecky, who most of you may know is probably the best American swimmer of the last. I mean, it's either her or Phelps of the last whatever 100 years, so ever. And one of her real hallmarks is she goes into workouts and she doesn't give a crap. She'll go, she'll pick some ridiculous send off, and if she comes up short, she doesn't sit around and cry about it. She just says, "Oh, okay, well, I'm just going to keep chipping away at it till I get it." Like, if you pick an arbitrary send off and you don't hit it, it doesn't mean that you're a bad athlete. It just means that you picked a hard target. And you know what? You're not always going to hit hard targets, and it's okay. And honestly, I think failing is probably a good sign because it means you're operating near your limits. And if you really want to stress your body and create kind of stress that's going to stimulate adaptations, you've got to be operating near your limits. And if you're near your limits, you're going to fail sometimes. Now, the key is how you react to that failure. You look at that failure as either A, a growth opportunity, or B, an assault on your ego. If you view it as an assault on your ego, you're going to be sitting in the corner crying. And I've seen people do that, and it's wildly unproductive. It's quite pathetic, honestly. But if you view it as a growth opportunity, all of a sudden, you're in business and you're going to get faster. Moving on. Oh, my slide there. Oh, bugger. So this is a scene from Seabiscuit. Seabiscuit had been trained as a loser horse. He's supposed to lose races, and then they're like, "How do we make him fast? How do we make him fast? What do we do?" And there was a scene where the trainer was like, "Maybe we just gotta let him be a horse again." And so the jockey just gets on him, and they just go running in the woods, and they go buck wild. They run, all day, like flying all around, galloping. And it's because Seabiscuit was away from the track, away from all the other horses, and he was just like, screw it, I'm going to run, I'm going to have fun. And then all of a sudden, when he let go of all this extraneous junk, he was like, oh, wait a minute, when I have a clear mind, I'm actually fast as hell. And that same approach applies to training. If you clear all that crap out of your mind and just let your body go and focus on the present, you'll be like, hot damn, I can be pretty fast. All right. Now, mental approach to racing. Have a quantitative plan and have a qualitative plan. You really need both. And the quantitative plan, they both of them start, race week, really. So quantitative plan, I don't endorse counting calories, but you kind of keep loose tabs on it leading into a race. I want to get this much fluids in. and particularly race morning. So have an idea of how many calories you should be getting race morning, limit your fiber, that kind of stuff. That now that most races have a rolling start, have a good idea of the swim pace group that you want to get into. I would say go about 5 minutes faster than your goal, or what you would reasonably expect. So say you expect to swim 70 minutes, try to bunch yourself around 65 in the hopes that maybe you can latch onto some feet and get a good draft from a 65-minute swimmer. Then all of a sudden, you're swimming 65 and you just bought yourself 5 free minutes. You have to have a bike heart rate and power plan. Well, if you don't have a power meter, I guess you don't have a power plan. And it should be segmented, not just, I want to average 200 watts on the bike, or I want to average 140 beats per minute on the bike. Every course has its ebbs and flows, climbs and descents, things of that nature. So what you want to do is come up with a plan. Okay, this climb I want to average, say your overall average is 200 watts. One of our kind of guiding principles is we want to spend as much time bracketed within 50 watts of that average. So what that would mean is, hey, okay, on this climb, I don't want to go over 250. And on this descent, I want to try to push 150 just so I can keep moving. That's kind of the idea there. And with the heart rate, what we want to do is we kind of want to have a U-shaped curve with the heart rate, where your heart rate's going to be a little bit spiked coming out of the water, just because that's the nature of swimming and whatnot. And then, when you settle in on the bike, it's going to drop a little bit, and that's fine. It drops 3-4 beats. But then you want to be able to re-stimulate the heart rate towards the end of the bike. Now, of course, all these things you go over with your coach. I'm just giving very general guidelines here. Bike food and fluids, you better have a plan for food and fluids going into a race. Do not wing it. And remember that your plan is minimums. If you need more, feel free to take more. But if you don't have a plan and you just decide to wing it, it's very easy to miss bottles, miss food, and then you start the run depleted. Remember, the purpose of bike fueling is not to fuel the bike, it's to set you up to run well. So even if you feel okay on the bike, do not abandon your plan, because you've got to set yourself up for a 26-mile run after you get off the bike. Bike pee goals, one of our general minimums is that you pee at least twice on the bike. This is a pretty good sign that you're reasonably well hydrated, but if you go more, friggin' great. I've had some of my best races when I pee 6, 7, 8 times on the bike. One time I peed 10 times on the bike, I celebrated. That was my happiest split of the day. Same thing with run heart rate and pace as bike heart rate and power, and run food and fluids as bike food and fluids. You can wing it a bit more on the run with food and fluids, simply because you don't have to do anything after you run. So you just have to do enough to get yourself to the finish line. And have a qualitative plan. Swim tactics, obviously there's a qualitative plan there because you're not swimming by a watch, you're not swimming by heart rate. So a lot of it is picking your line, picking the feet you follow. I won't get super in depth into swim tactics. That's something you should be talking to your coach about, because I could go on for half an hour about swim tactics, but I don't want to drag this on too long, so I'm not gonna. And then have a coping plan for every reasonable contingency during a race. You drop a bottle, you get a flat tire, you have a bike crash, one of your, you drop food, your shoelaces break, just have an idea of how you want to handle it. And the one thing to come out of with that is after you address whatever issue it is that you're addressing, just get back to your pacing plan. Don't try to make up for lost time, because all you're going to do is set off a ticking time bomb and start digging yourself a hole. So anyways, I just thought this was funny. There's not a real deep meaning to it. It's just the guy from Hangover, Zach Galifianakis, doing a whole bunch of math in his head. And that's kind of like, honestly, that kind of resembles me on race day. A lot on the bike and definitely on the run. I'm just doing math in my head for the entire race. I'm doing math on fueling. okay, I had this gel, I had 100 calories 20 minutes ago, blah, 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 blah. Okay, how many bottles have I had? I've had 2.5 bottles. I've peed once. What does that mean? What does that mean for my hydration? Oh, okay, my power's here, my heart rate's here. What is that telling me about my body temperature? Um, okay, I hit this check mark in an hour 30. What does that tell me about my pacing? Uh, okay, here's an out and back. That person's 2 minutes in front of me. What am I going to have to do per mile to catch up to them? Blah, 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 blah. What am I going to have to do to keep this person's 90 seconds behind me, nipping on my heels? How fast do I have to run to hold them off? Things like that. It's a constant math game in my head, honestly, for the entire race. And that's really where the value of the quantitative plan comes in. Moving on to more mental approach to racing. Stay in the present, just like I said with training. It's an approach that works for training. It's going to work for racing too. You have to stay task oriented, and you need to have a short-term memory. If things go wrong, spoiler alert, things go wrong for everybody during an Ironman. The people who do the best are the ones who don't let it fluster them. They adapt and move on. They adapt, overcome, and move on. If it's just dropping a bottle, then either they pick it up or they just get an extra bottle at the next aid station. But they don't freak out about it. They don't waste mental stress on that, because mental energy is energy that could be going to your legs instead of worrying about this or that, or getting freaked out because you saw somebody break some stupid rule that nobody cares about. Who cares? Or the same idea is like in the swim. A lot of people freak out if there's contact in the swim, if they get hit. You know what? Spoiler alert, people aren't intentionally trying to hit you. And the worst, so fighting with them or kicking them or grabbing them, nobody's trying to intentionally grab you on the swim. They're just thrashing, just like you are, honestly. And maybe they think you're a jerk. Maybe they think you hit them. So you've got to stay task oriented, and your task in the water is to move forward as quickly as possible. So if somebody hits you and you don't like them, just keep moving forward. Get away from them. Don't punch them. Don't give them an ounce of your mental energy. Just keep pushing forward. This task-oriented approach also feeds into what I was talking about, how race day is kind of like a math equation, because you're constantly just saying, okay, what is the best thing I can be doing in this moment? How do my legs feel? Okay, do I need to speed up, slow down? Where's my heart rate? Do I need to speed up, slow down? Not thinking about, oh, this is miserable, I've got 20 miles to go. Rather think, how do I optimize myself at mile 6? When you're at mile 10, how do I optimize myself at mile 10? And you have to stay in the present. And if you stay in the present long enough, eventually you're at the finish line. The short-term memory goes back to, if things go wrong, you can't dwell on them. Don't let one mistake slow you down twice. You get a flat tire, fix it and move on. Don't lose time fixing it and then lose time stewing about it while you're biking. That's completely counterproductive. You could draw that out into anything. You see what I'm saying? You've got to remember your why. This is going to help you push through the dark times. Dark times are going to happen. Whether it's mile 70 of the bike, mile 14 of the run, whatever. There's just going to be a lull. And at moments like those, it's really, really great to remember your why. It doesn't have to be grand. Maybe your why is just, I really want to enjoy a kick-ass pizza when I finish. That's fine. You know what? That was half of my why last race. I was just thinking about getting back to Boston and eating some friggin' good pizza. But whatever it is, whether it's, you're doing your race for a fundraiser, or you're doing a race because you want to set a good example for your kids, or, whatever your why is, just keep that in your back pocket and set up a mantra for yourself that will help you get through the dark times in the race. And come up with it before the race. But don't just contrive it. Make sure it's actually something you're going to respond to. And you've got to trust your training. Entering a race with doubts is not going to be productive. In general, everyone we work with is more than prepared to get through an Ironman. It's a matter of if they believe they can get through an Ironman. And if they can, you know what? They're going to be good, and they're probably going to go pretty fast. You put in a ton of work, And this is just one day compared to 6 months of work. You can get through it as long as you put in the work and the training. And when you do trust your training and believe in yourself, and you have realistic goals, remember last slide? Went into quantitative goals for bike power, run pace, heart rate. When those quantitative goals and belief match up, when belief and ability match up, that's when you really nail a race. That's when you see the best results, and that's when you absolutely reach your potential. If your belief outstrips your ability, you're going to go too fast, you're going to burn out, things are going to end poorly. If your ability exceeds your belief, you're not going to stress yourself enough. You're going to leave something on the table. But when those two things are in line, you're going to have absolute optimal performance. And so this photo, what's this background? This is a scene from The Matrix, you may remember. It's the moment when Neo realizes he's living in a computer simulation and he sees everything for what it is, and he's perfectly living in the present. Well, stay in the present. Because he just sees, oh, yeah, there's just some number codes. Oh, somebody's throwing bullets at me. I'll just stop them because I'm living in the present and I see reality for what it is. And hopefully you can see how I kind of think that applies to racing. It's not freaking out, it's just observing the reality around you and proceeding forward in the best way possible. Mental approach to daily nutrition. I'll just stop the spoiler alert here. There's no deeper meaning to this pizza other than it looks friggin' good. So, yeah. I had some pizza today. So daily nutrition. I'm talking daily nutrition here, not race nutrition. I'm not really getting into race nutrition all that much on this because I'm talking about mental approaches mostly. So there are three main purposes. One, recover from your last session. Two, prepare for your next session. Three, manipulate your body comp. And on this third one, it's very important. And the people who can do this, great, but a lot of people can't. You have to divorce body comp from self-image. And I don't know how to convince people to do that. I'm able to do it. I know people who can, but I'm not a psychiatrist, so I'm not going to pretend to describe the steps on how to do it. I'm just going to describe why it's important. Like, I always tell myself, if I want to achieve some body comp goal, like, you have to remember the ideal triathlon body composition looks pretty dang weird to most of the world. Like, average Ironman triathlete body is not average human body. So, if you feel like you need to lean down for a race for whatever reason, don't take it as a knock on your looks, on your attractiveness, on your self-worth. It is purely about speed. Conversely, if you need to bulk up for a race, it doesn't mean you're a scrawny pipsqueak or a weakling. It just means, hey, maybe we want your legs to look a little bit more like Starkowitz because that guy's a friggin' gorilla and he can push 300 plus watts for an Ironman. So if we could have monstrous legs like his, maybe that'd help out. It's not a knock. If your coach suggests body composition changes, as a coach, I never push it. If an athlete asks about it, I will gladly talk to them about it. But I don't want to introduce that because I do know it's a hot button issue for a lot of people. But if you can separate your kind of self-worth and ego from body composition and realize that it's just another tool to manipulate speed, you can find gains by kind of optimizing body comp. And when we say optimize body comp, we mean optimize body comp. We don't mean starve yourself until you look like a skeleton. We mean, most Kona winners on the male side are around 6-7% body fat. I'll say most Ironman winners. So, 6-7% body fat and maybe a BMI of 21 to 24. On the female side, it's maybe 10 to 12% body fat and a BMI of maybe like 20 to 22. And that's the tippy, pointy end of the field. You don't have to hit those numbers to be the fastest. I'm just saying kind of empirically, that's kind of what's shaken out. Um, so, anyways, back to daily nutrition. As far as I'm concerned, I've never felt deprived when I'm trying to hit a race weight number. All I really do is alter the timing of my food. Like, we're training so dang much where you can stuff yourself and like be really friggin' full, but maybe it's just not stuffing yourself with cinnamon buns. Maybe it's stuffing yourself um, with carrots and hummus, something like that. And the easiest way to kind of avoid those traps is really just it starts at the grocery store. If you just don't have the traps around the house, honestly, you won't eat them. Um, and it doesn't mean never have the traps. It doesn't mean never have a cinnamon bun. Just, maybe think about the timing. Like, you don't have to deprive yourself. Just have it right after a workout when you're still in kind of that grain window. Don't have it 4 hours after a workout. The way you got to think about it is giving your body what it needs when it needs it. So in the context of a workout window, it's going to need quick acting carbohydrates and sodium and fluids. But if you and it gets into the idea of what's healthy, what's not healthy. You could say a salmon burger is healthy, um, but if you eat it in the middle of a hard run, you're going to throw up. Like, that doesn't sound very healthy to me. Conversely, a salmon burger is fantastic 4 hours after a workout, whereas a cinnamon bun, maybe not. Because it's going to spike your blood sugar, you get insulin response, yada, yada, yada. So it's about timing. Like, you can still have the pizza, you can still have the pasta, you can still have the cinnamon bun. Just do it in your grain window. And as long as you do that and then outside your grain window, really hit the low glycemic, nutrient dense foods, body comp kind of takes care of itself for the most part. And this last thing is just me. You know, Eating is fun. Eating is one of the real pleasures we get as triathletes. It's to the victor go the spoils. If you go do an 80-mile bike ride, don't be the psycho that like does an 80-mile bike ride and then it's like, sorry guys, I gotta eat this wedge salad. That's all I can have. Like, no, you're just gonna be miserable. Have some fun with it. Eat things you enjoy. Don't count calories. Just get a feel for how your body responds. And if you do that, um, you can kind of figure it out. I've just found that counting calories and being super nerdy about it sucks all the fun out of, honestly, one of the most fun parts about being a triathlete, which is eating. Um, and don't get too crazy about weighing yourself because there's so many micro variations, especially with how much we work out with hydration and fluids, and your weight will fluctuate wildly throughout a day. So maybe just pick, the best way to go is weigh yourself once a week, always at the same time. Like, okay, I always weigh myself Monday morning after I go to the bathroom. That's pretty consistent. And it gives me a pretty good gauge on trends in what my weight is doing. Um, Moving on to coach-athlete relationship. I'll kind of keep this short because I've already been droning on for 40 minutes, and none of us need me a whole lot longer than that. And also, this isn't really too much. This is pretty basic stuff. The coach owes you a daily workout schedule. The coach owes you honest feedback on most workouts and all races. Not all workouts. Like, sometimes a zone R ride, there's just no need to respond. Like, it's a friggin' zone R ride. Let's not get overly analytical here. And it has to be honest feedback because maybe giving compliments all the time is good for the short term, but ultimately it's doing the athlete a disservice by giving them a false sense of uh, confidence, a false sense of it's you're trying to help them go faster, not just stroke their ego. Now, that's not to say you should be mean. Most of my comments are overwhelmingly positive. I'm just saying there have to be time. You can't be afraid to call an athlete out when they need to be called out. And it doesn't need to be in a judgmental manner, just as very matter of fact, like, hey, you did this. Things would have gone better if you had done that. Just that's it. It's not calling them a bad person. It's not reflecting on their character. It's just helping them on their way to hitting their goals. As a coach, it's our job, I think, to give you answers on everything triathlon related. That said, Or if we don't know the answer, we find the answer. But that said, with medical advice, we can lean on us to a certain extent, but I'm not one who's going to sit here and diagnose illnesses over the phone or over text message. That's what doctors are for. They go to a lot of school that I didn't go to. So take advantage of that. The coach, a coach should be offering you video and technical analysis anytime you want it. Send it along to them. It could help you. It could expose technique errors that maybe you just don't know about. Fuel and nutrition plans, quick responses, all this kind of stuff is just standard coach athlete. And help with goal setting. This is actually pretty important. It has to be realistic and attainable goals. It shouldn't be easy. They should be challenging, but they should be attainable. And you've just got to work that out with the two of you. Now, that said, I generally let my athletes set their own goals and then I refine them because I'm a firm believer in the fact that motivation must be from within. Has to be. Because that's the only thing that's going to get you out of bed at 5 a.m. to jump on your bike on the trainer. That's what's going to get you to push through the hard run workouts, the hard swim sets. If you're internally motivated. If you need a coach to give you pep talks, I'm sorry, you're just not going to last because pep talks occasionally are fine. Everybody gets down and they just need a little pick me up. Once every couple months, okay. But if you need pep talks or if you need to be pestered all the time to do your training, you're probably just not all that internally motivated. And it doesn't make you a bad person. It just means you have to be honest about how you're spending your time and if you really want to make the commitment. So anyways, just something to consider. So athletes, you got to believe. Coaches, you have to give them reason to believe. Now, whatever that reason is, whether it's you can point to previous race results for either them or other athletes that you coach, you can point to scientific studies, whatever it is that you think that athlete will buy into and will get them to believe in what they're doing, go ahead and use that tool. Now, athletes, I know this is going to sound a little bit weird, but whether you believe in your training and whether you believe in what your coach is giving you is oftentimes just as important, if not more important, than the actual workout itself. And the reasoning there is a decent plan executed perfectly is going to give better results than an amazing plan executed poorly. Furthermore, you're going to need that internal belief to push through those pain periods, to go do those workouts when you're exhausted and you feel like, hey, maybe I shouldn't be training. If you believe in what your coach is giving you, then maybe you're going to have an open mind about that session and you're going to blow through barriers that you thought previously existed but were only in your mind. But you're able to blow through them because you believe in what your coach is giving you and you believe in your ability, and you say, hey, if coach is doing this, if coach says I can do this, then you know what? Maybe I can do it. And that's when you find breakthroughs. When you find the faith that somebody else places in you, you finally place in yourself, and you'd be amazed what you can achieve. Hopefully I didn't beat that too much into the ground. The graphic here is pretty self-explanatory. Got to take that leap of faith. And a lot of times it's our coach that kind of gives us the, whatever. Say this homeboy here is doing a pole vault. Coach sticks the pole up so you can do the pole vault across the chasm. That's a great analogy, isn't it? A couple things the way I approach effort is assumed. You don't get a gold star just for executing what you were told to execute, a set of instructions. Anybody can do that. That said, you'll get a good job if it was a hard set, but you're supposed to try hard. Why else are we doing this? You're trying to reach goals, and if you want to reach goals, you got to try hard. Execution is expected. And also just give your coach info as soon as you can about work travel, family travel, conflicts, whatever. Just so we can help you work around it, come up with an alternate schedule. because we're trying to help you. And so the earlier you tell us, the more we can shift things around so that it doesn't interrupt your build towards whatever your goal race is. Swim workout submissions. This is just kind of a way of thinking about things, and I just threw this slide in here kind of gratuitously because it's a pet peeve of mine. I hate Garmin swim files. I have yet to find a coach who likes them. Maybe one exists. I just haven't found them. They are a nightmare to read. Like, try sorting through 50 lines of laps of variable numbers when there's 8 different columns in every line, and it's a nightmare. And then if you want to go back and look at and reference these workouts in the future, say, oh, what did I do for the monster set back in January? Have fun looking through that. That's all you. What's going to work out a lot better? If you want to have a Garmin file, great, swim, put it in there. But then include something like this in the notes. And this is from Adero, our old platform, but whatever. Notes are notes, right? So for this, something would be like, this is, I don't know, some athlete of mine. Oh, no, I guess this was mine. Not that it matters. So all the details you need to know about this set are right here in 4 lines. It was a monster set. Okay, long course meters. That gives us context for the times. Because long course meters paces are obviously going to be different than short course yards. So you can tell right here, 4 lines. It was long course meters. These were my base send-offs for the 100s and the 200s. 100 paces, 200 paces. Bracket it. It's all good. This is way easier than reading 80 lines of swim laps, isn't it? So think about it. It's going to make your life and your coach's life a heck of a lot easier. All right, that's it. All right, we got through it. So as with everything, it's your potential, it's your life, not someone else's. So just when you wake up, say, how can I be the best version of me today? And go ahead and do it. And don't forget your dreams, like big pink donuts. So that's it. That's all I have to say. Are there any questions out there? Questions. Anybody have questions? I'm going to say that's a negatory, since I haven't gotten any. Or if I have gotten any, I don't know how to read them. So they're not getting answered, because I don't know the software that well. So that's that. I hope you all enjoyed it, and happy training. Peace.